Guys, I'm joined today by Dr. Anne Mary Amber, nutritional medicine, and I'm really excited to have her on the show today because, as I've talked about in past podcasts, and I will be continuing to talk about, I believe that health and food and medicine all go very much hand in hand. Our levels of nutrition are absolutely crucial to live an optimal life full of energy and full of vitality. So welcome aboard. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, thank you, Lorenzo. It's a real pleasure to be here. And, I would like to start by acknowledging the lands that we are having this little meeting on, and elders past, present, and emerging.
And future, absolutely. Now, take us through your journey a little bit. Why was nutrition and nutritional medicine so interesting to you? For me, it's been quite interesting because, as Hippocrates says, let thine food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but it seems like there are so many disorders, especially chronic, which seem to be able to be improved upon by nutrition and or fasting. What is that in your kind of world? Is that close at all?
Wow, what a question.
It is straight out the box.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a great question because it really, it actually takes me back a lot of years. And it's interesting. It actually takes me back to when I was probably about 21 and I had done my nursing training. So I was indoctrinated into the modern medicine, and really it was about focusing on really about treating disease as it came along, and it was really about treating symptoms, and it was really a lot about like blocking things. So it was anti-inflammatories, antibiotics, and I was very fortunate to be a bit of a gypsy, and so therefore I was traveling and living up in northern Queensland and in a different environment, and I just started to move. I started to get involved in exercise, and then that just made me feel and look different. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing an old hygienist, and hygienists were interesting sort of naturopaths that were probably come out of the Kellogg era, so that sort of like time in the late 1800s. And so this was sort of a remnant of that. And this old hygienist just sort of looked at me and just sort of, I'm starting to feel better about myself with movement. And he shared with me about what I put in then reflects on what it comes out. And I actually had some colonic irrigation. So this is like back in 1984.
God, there would have been too many of those around.
There wasn't many of them around. And it completely and profoundly changed my life. I still stayed me, but what I started to learn was that I could make better choices about me. I had clarity and I had better vision. And with that, I made better choices. And the healthier choices were easier. So it was interesting. It was like once you started being more conscious of what your needs were, then your needs became easier to see and easier to explore. So it was a really interesting time, and I was very young. I liked
still
OP
young,
rum.
Still young.
Well, I'd liked OP rum and meat pies.
Time's relative, guys. Time is relative.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. And I sort of said, I say it to myself, and I say it to a lot of my my patients as well, is good begets good, evil begets evil. So imagine if you can sort of spiral up or spiral down. Spiral down is really, really easy, very, very unconscious. But if you are wanting to sort of go the opposite way, and you start diving into exercise, you start diving into maybe intermittent fasting or detoxing or giving things up for Lent, those choices are often met with the getting rid of that brain fog. One of the massive revelations for me, I was really, really lucky. I've been a massive gypsy too. When I was over in Adelaide for 2009, I had the good fortune of living with an incredible personal trainer and a naturopath who used to do live bloods. And it was the kind of house that it's like, we got a barbecue, but you're not allowed to bring any meat into the house. It's like, well, what's the point of that? It's like, well, that's for potato. Okay. So it was the first time I was introduced to vegan living or vegetarian living, and especially, I read something called Grain Brain, I think a book, and it was kind of like
pearl butter.
Gluten free. Yeah. So it's just like, gluten-free, which coming from a European family, you don't eat bread, you don't eat pasta. It's just like, I'm going to disown you. What's the point of having you in the family anymore? But it was just like the weight fell off and the clarity was just incredible. So you're absolutely right. Those healthy choices get a lot easier when you just put a couple, you don't have to make them all at once. You can sort of, piece by piece.
Absolutely.
And it's my understanding as well that sort of physiologically speaking, as we're developing, as an embryo, I'd say that the brain and the stomach tissue seems to differentiate at a very similar time. So it's kind of like, or in my understanding, the brain and the stomach kind of communicate before the heart beats. It's like your heart and your stomach are like that. So are you what you eat? What you go in, what you put into the stomach, does that affect the brain as well?
Well, look, it's a great question, and I
It's a bit
think
loaded.
no, not really, not really, because I think we've talked about it. I mean, it's really obvious. I mean, it's like you are what you eat, you are what you digest, you are what you assimilate, you are what you metabolize, you are what you actually excrete. So you are all those things. But at the end of the day, you do start out as a tube.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, so yes, your gut and your brain and your bum, they're all connected and they're all one tube, and then they fold and then they differentiate, and then of course you have your heartbeat and you start to develop. I think what I've explored and what I see more in modern times is that we're all profoundly different. You can look at people and you can look at it's about terroir. We hear about wine and how the French talk about the land. So it's not just the grape; it's actually the land that the grape grows on, which gives the character and the flavors, etc., and the individualness. So we're all like that, and so but all our terroir is a combination of our gut bacteria, our parents' gut bacteria, the diet that we had, and the environment and the stressors that we had very young in those first couple of years. So in a way, a lot of us actually set up how we're going to be very early on. And so therefore, I'll often look at people and try and understand what was happening back then, what the diet was. Because sometimes you might think, oh yeah, gluten's really terrible. And yes, it's inflammatory. It will create a leaky gut for 30 minutes every time you eat it. But there are some people that with their gut bacteria and their culture, gluten from a certain area, in actual fact, will make them feel better and will make them feel more expanded and will make them feel comfortable because, like stress is a huge thing for us and they find comfort. So I would never say never to anyone about anything. It's about exploring the individual. And I'm now saying you are what the interface of your gut and your environment are. So it's about what's happening there. So yes, sometimes you'll eat something and your internal environment is not in a good place and that will not work. And then another time you'll eat it and you'll flourish. So, there's no one size fits all. It is profoundly individual. And what we're going to see more and more with the changing ways that we can look at DNA and how we can look at SNPs in our bodies. We can maybe talk about that another time for people to understand.
Touch on some interesting things.
We will be able to individuate your diet and individuate, even your thinking, to be able to really enhance optimal wellness.
God, we've touched on some really talking about environment and stepping into say epigenetics and that whole science and an individual's journey into sort of how they eat, because I mean that's why we take really in-depth family histories, because it's not necessarily you're not necessarily your genetics and that's where it stops. It's almost like there's a family stupidity which runs down the world as well. So it is really kind of engaging with yourself and encouraging people to go on that journey, because like you said, God, and then you got behavior in there. We need 10 hours to have this conversation. We really do.
It's a big journey.
Thing. It's a big journey. So don't necessarily take it lightly, but if you fall off the bandwagon of whatever your goal is and whatever you define as success, take it easy. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's taken me years to know how I'd like to eat, and
Mm.
understanding my addiction to certain foods and how that sort of plays into the
Mm.
world as well. So
Mm.
wow, this is so good to have you here.
Oh, thank you.
Such a good conversation topic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, uh, how about some wisdom that you believe is really, really true to you that maybe someone can take home? Is there something that you'd like to say? Once again, it's a huge topic.
Yeah. Yeah. And yes, I was not asked to prep any of this.
But yeah,
All
we do things on the
spontaneous.
fly.
It's very
It's a lot more
spontaneous
truthful that way.
conversation.
It's straight out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, I think really, I mean, bottom line is know thyself.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, no one's perfect. I do not look up. No one wakes up every morning and looks in the mirror and goes, "Yes, rock star, you're the best." So therefore, why should we expect that of other people, and why should we expect that of ourselves?
Yeah.
So it's really about, that learning about authenticity and how, like I understand my uglies. I understand what's not okay about me. And what I do is that I just, that's there. And so therefore I do my best to, if that then interferes with how I'm thinking, feeling, or things I'm doing, or the interactions I have, then I really need to then maybe step up and do it better.
Mm.
And then what happens for me is that when I'm with people, and if there's if something is not working, and maybe I'm being challenged, and maybe I'm being, the finger's being pointed at me, I can own it when it's me, and then if it's not me and it's a projection, I can then with kindness go, oh, cool, this is how you're feeling. Cool, let's have a discussion. And I think there's a freedom in accepting you're ugly, and there's a profound capacity for to be more expanded when you're with your good. So I mean, I think simplistically, I mean, that's sort of my little bit of wisdom.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a huge philosophy on life, and I think we were just talking about that earlier today as well. And just that constantly wanting to reflect and be better. I think that's where our individual and also collective power really lies. And I mean, I'm no saint. I'm certainly going to make mistakes, but I tell you what, I'm gonna go neurotic. I'm gonna try everything that I can to work out what the hell just happened and how can I improve upon myself. And that's kind of really the reason for these podcasts and videos and stuff. So, like, once again, we've touched on some really amazing things, and the philosophy that you've just shared is I think that's really beautiful, and it's thank you so much for sharing. And I think people out there that really let that sink in, that's an absolute, like, you could live your life by that. That's really beautiful. So really, thanks for sharing it. Thanks for being here. This has been so tremendous.
That's fine.
Thank you so much. I hope this has been insightful and enjoyable for other people, because it certainly is on this side of the camera. So thank you very much for joining us, you guys, and thank you so much again. And we'll definitely work again to get you out here again.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.